My name is Rocky Crockett. I'm the executive director at the Allendale Community Garden.
My name is Pratt Olson, and I work at the garden as an AmeriCorps Vista member.
The Allendale Community Garden has been around in the Norway, Maine area since 2008, and they have a garden mission to be an educational demonstration garden and not a production garden. Both Rocky and Pratt agreed that increasing people's exposure to the garden is one of the most important things that they can do. And in the last few years, they've really focused on growing the summer farmers market, and they want to create a welcoming environment. They want to make the garden feel interesting and attractive and accessible to all different kinds of people. They want to reduce the stigma around accessing local foods and normalize sharing these foods with neighbors in a comfortable and casual way. Pratt's focus in the last 2 years as an AmeriCorps Vista member has been outreaching to low-income and SNAP participants and figuring out incentives and a way for them to participate more in the market and the garden. They've also added a Power of Produce Club to draw in more children and families. They added a pizza oven on site, and then they've also incorporated the Maine Harvest Bucks program, which subsidizes purchases made with SNAP dollars and actually doubles SNAP dollars in their worth at the garden. They've found that it's been a powerful way to draw in people and to make buying local food affordable. They've also added in the bumper crop program, which is where they purchased gift cards through the Maine Federation of Farmers Markets group, and they distributed it to people as a way of inviting them to the market and offering a reason for them to come in and check it out.
Food system includes land ownership. At the bottom line, I would say um, providing land for people right in Norway sort of addresses the issue that a lot of people in Norway are in rental properties. They may not be able to grow gardens there. So just on a very small scale, access to land was one of the main issues that we were looking to address. And then as we've grown, um, I mean, really, when the garden was founded, some of the issues clear in people's mind were, a broken global food system, food exports, climate change, just the global transportation of food, the monocropping, oil consumption, all of these sort of global aspects. And for me personally, when I got involved, my focus really was around genetically modified crops and especially the consolidation of the food supply. That sort of larger picture has what's been on my mind. And I think that what we're doing here locally is in a very small way, even carrying on an understanding of how it is to grow food. What does it mean to plant a seed? Where do seeds come from? How do you save seeds? Just by even providing some of this really basic knowledge, I think will tune people into these issues around food. And then I think regionally, the development of a community kitchen that we're working on now is an effort to create a local food processing facilities we've known for a few decades now are really lacking in Maine. Maine used to be like export 80% of its food, and now it's importing 80% of its food because a lot of the factories that were processing have long ago shut down. So again, on a small scale with our community kitchen, we're going to allow people access to be able to preserve some of their harvest and learn about the process of doing that. Sorry.
Yeah, I think what Rocky was just saying really speaks to like the systemic issues that we see at the regional and also larger scales within our food system. Um, and I think that like the work that the garden is doing to provide people with that connection and that sense of like closening, that's not a word, like eliminating the distance between a person and where their food is coming from, like that work is sort of like the system shifting work. And I think something that I've been thinking about just in this position that is sort of under the resolve in Maine to end hunger by 2030, they sort of present that that work in two phases, like one in this sort of systemic phase that Rocky was just speaking to, and then um, the other phase being just sort of like meeting the immediate nutrition needs of folks in various communities. And in Oxford County, the food insecurity rate is like between 15 and 20%. So it's really, really high. And I think that there are so many different systems in place to try and address that and to try and meet people's immediate food needs. And I think that the garden as an organization is pretty uniquely set up to be able to both address like the systemic shift in our food system, and also like this sort of immediate need that people have for accessing fresh vegetables and accessing like the skills to prepare the veggies that they've got or don't have. So I think, yeah, I think just being able to identify sort of that line between making sure that people are getting adequate nutrition and also simultaneously working towards a system or a food culture that doesn't create those holes where the same groups of people over and over again are excluded from that system.
I would say generally, like, there's a sense that people are making a healthy choice for themselves by being involved, by shopping with us, for example. I think people understand the challenge of pesticides and herbicides and unknown chemicals in their food and having concern around that. But I think in terms of like some of the stuff that I spoke to previously about potentially the consolidation of varieties of crops or patenting of crops or eventually losing access because of monocropping. I don't know that maybe they're aware of those concerns about the local food, about the current food system.
Yeah, I would definitely echo that it does feel like there's sort of a generalized sense of awareness. And I think I had a number of conversations this summer with folks who were visiting the garden for the first time or folks who'd never been to the garden, but I was talking to like at food pantries or, wherever it was, that like there's this sense that, eating vegetables that come from someplace nearby is good for your body and like an alternative that is better than um, foods that are more readily accessible. That was a theme that I saw over and over again, in those sorts of conversations about, yeah, how people understand their role in the food system. But I also I think that there's sort of in that more common conversation there isn't it doesn't feel like there is sort of this common um, thread of like larger picture sort of talking about. Yeah, and to be honest, I think that comes down to the fact that like people are struggling to meet their basic nutrition needs and like um having conversations or thinking systemically is like tough when it's just like hard to feel supported by the system that's right in front of you. Um but I definitely think that people understand that the choices that they're making like impact their selves and their health, and like that impacts their ability to participate in the system, be that in like a positive or a change making or whatever negative way.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We in the class, I think there's been a lot of like a theme throughout the class about how the food system, whether purposely or not with intent, was kind of the current food system was like created and designed to be complicated so that it really is difficult for people to untangle all the different threads of everything that's going on with the current food system and how everything interacts, and to create these issues or the system that is full of inequity and doesn't serve our people, the globe, the environment well. Like, I think that's been a common theme throughout the thread, is it's really hard for people to get that big picture idea of what's going on.
I would just say that I feel like I don't fully understand my role in the food system, and like it's tough to have conversations with people and like I hear myself being like, well, I don't think that people are thinking like at these, but like I also am not like I don't feel like I have a complete sense for where I fit within that, larger hierarchy and complicated web of how we access food. I think I've actually thought about this a lot, Alex, because I think it's a really interesting question, and it also I feel like is like a personal moral dilemma that I have. But I very much feel that the garden does sort of operate within the mainstream food system, like in this sort of lesser of the evils kind of way, where I think the garden is doing incredibly important work, but it very much feels like that important work is sort of like fitting within the mold that the mainstream food system is creating.
When I think about addressing our local or regional food system, I think that increasingly the role that I hope that we're playing as a nonprofit is to create cooperative opportunities and alliances among farmers. I was just having a conversation with somebody this afternoon about, them appreciating our CSA model because so often farms are busy trying to like brand and promote their own food outlet, their own presence at the market, their own CSA programs, and and a lot of time and energy could be saved if there was more of a cooperative aggregation model happening, which we already are doing with our CSA program. But I think that we're already providing a no-cost farmers market for farmers to participate in. They don't currently pay a fee to be there. Um, so I think the more that we can just try to foster and coordinate a cooperative environment among farmers. Um, I think that is a place where we're falling short that we could address.
I think something that comes to mind for me that we've had several conversations about, and that I think the garden has really tangible plans to address in the form of the kitchen edition, is trying to bridge the summer winter gap between food availability. And as Rocky has mentioned multiple times, like the garden as an organization doesn't have the capacity to make, a large scale shift just in like where people are sourcing their food. Like even people who are coming to the farmers market, I think it's fair to say that that's a really small portion of all the food that they're eating. But being able to like continue doing that work of connecting farmers and facilitating, the eater to farmer, um, you know, relationship that is seemingly so elusive in this area and in general. I think being able to think about developing like year round instead of just in the summer, because that feels like such a short and fleeting period of time for people to be able to, access local foods and like access that sense of connection to where their food is coming from. Um, yeah, I think the garden's plans to be able to offer that resource through the year. I think that will be a meaningful contribution to the community for sure. Yeah, so that looks like the kitchen and the greenhouse, and who knows what else, what other plans may come with that.
The Allen Day Community Garden has many different programs, all aimed at drawing people back into their local food system. They have a no-fee cooperative model CSA program, a weekly summer farmers market that heavily focuses on increasing low-income access and participation, youth programs that work to create youth leaders and increase knowledge around growing food and how it impacts our environment, and they're looking toward the future by building out their year-round growing and programming capacity.